It's pretty rude to tell someone that they're not being paid to think, and it might actually cue malicious compliance. We've got a story on that shortly, but first, no more VTO. So, long story short, my company got rid of voluntary time off last year. I've been with the company for 5 years and have always enjoyed going home early when there's no work to do. However, now we have to use PTO to go home early. I work 12-hour shifts and love to get some extra sleep. Plus, my current financial situation is very unique and I don't need the extra hours. For the last 2 days, I've been unable to do anything at work because of a work-related maintenance. I can't do anything at all, but I have to use PTO to go home? I have directly brought this up to the person in charge of allowing VTO, and they said that there's always something to do. I can't do anything because of maintenance. Cue malicious compliance. I've been sitting in the break room watching shows for 2 shifts in a row now. I'm on the 4th season of Righteous Gemstones, and I've only just started watching it, and have only seen it at work. Some people might think this is a dream to watch movies at work, but I would much rather be outside and get extra sleep than be stuck bored at work for 12 hours. Yeah, certain things you can't really put a price on. I myself would much rather be resting and rejuvenating and healing mentally than getting paid to do nothing on the clock. So yeah, I get the frustration there. FGC Clunk replied, I get it. It's not the dream job to get a job that you get paid for doing nothing. I worked for a company that pulled my project and had nothing for me to do instead. I ended up spending 3 months playing computer games on my personal laptop instead of writing software. I even told them that's what I would do until they gave me work to do, but I was bored for months until I quit. Our next story is, You're Only Here to Count. Hi everyone, I wanted to share a story from my job. I work at a place where we pack fruit. There are about 20 robots that fill boxes with fruit, and there's one position in charge of checking that each robot puts the correct amount of fruit in each box. To explain it a bit more, we basically have to check all day that the robots are doing a good job, making sure each box has the right amount of fruit and keeping track of which robot packed it. Hope that makes sense. Obviously, since it's heavy machinery, sometimes the robots damage the fruit. So when I'm checking a box, it's possible to find fruit that's been cut in half or otherwise damaged. When I first started, I was assigned to that checking position. It's pretty simple. Count the fruit in each box and return it to the export line. But whenever I found damaged fruit, I used to write it down in a section of the control log called comments, noting how many damaged ones I found. I also started reporting it to a woman from the quality team. She didn't like that. She kept telling me that it wasn't my job, which is technically true, but I thought it was important to say something when the damage was a lot. One day, all the robots started sending out fruit that was cut into multiple pieces. No idea how. So I went to report it again, and this woman confronted me and said, quote, "Your job is only to count. Count, 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 and count. That's it." She said it in a very rude tone and sent me back to the station. Of course, I thought, she's totally right. So instead of getting upset, whenever I found damaged fruit, I just counted it like a normal one, closed the box, and sent it down the export line. That's how I spent the whole day, just counting, nothing else, until the export inspection team noticed there was a lot of damaged fruit already packed and ready to go. The quality managers came to talk to me and asked why I hadn't reported it. I just pointed to the woman and said, she told me my job was only to count, count, and count, so that's all I did. And I shrugged. She started giving me hateful looks while the managers told her that this position does need to report damaged fruit and packaging issues. At the end of the day, they moved me to another area, a much better one, where I now do quality too, and this woman can't help but glare at me every time she sees me. Wasn't I just doing what I was told? Just counting? Yeah, I think at some point, common sense has to prevail over a power trip of telling someone what their job is and what they need to and not do. Obviously, damaged fruit is something that the company needs to know about, so even though technically it's not part of the job description, like, why wouldn't you want to know that information? Why wouldn't you want that reported? So, yeah, totally justified here. Our next story is, I had my yard certified as a national wildlife habitat to spite a busy neighbor. Our yard is wild. I mean that in the real definition of living or growing in the natural environment. We have no lawn. We aggressively remove and prevent invasive and noxious species of plants and ensure that what grows is native to our area and drought resistant. The wildflowers that grow are things like lupine, blue flax, spiderwort, and black-eyed Susan, and sunflowers among others. We have natural elements like driftwood logs to retain water, and we even have an elk skull in the yard to act as a shelter for critters. There are a plethora of birds, bees, bunnies, and other wildlife. More wildlife than any yard in the area, as far as I can tell. It's beautiful and alive, but definitely not a manicured lawn with perfectly cut grass and landscaping. Last summer, we got a notice from the county that our yard was in violation of some county ordinance. My husband called the number on the notice and got a very over-it employee who let out a big sigh and said he had gotten like 30 complaints from one person for the entire strip of road that we live on. Keep in mind, you can't batch report an area. You have to file reports house by house. So someone had the time and energy to pull up Google Maps and file a report for about 30 houses for overgrown weeds. I checked the county ordinance and made sure everything we had in our yard was in compliance. Things like purposely cultivated, which our wildflowers definitely were. We planted specific species of seeds and we remove whatever's not native. None of the wild plants block any sidewalks, nor do they hang over onto any other properties. Now knowing that it was someone with way too much time on their hands, I did some reading and learned that my yard has everything needed and then some to qualify as a national wildlife habitat. So I filled out the form, paid the fee, and got my certificate. My husband called the county employee back, who said, "Send me that certificate." He looked it over, thanked my husband for the new information he can use in the future, and closed our case. I now have signs on my yard that announce the property as a wild.
This podcast is brought to you by Aura. Imagine waking up to find your bank account drained, bills for loans you never took out, a warrant for your arrest, all because someone stole your identity. Hackers aren't waiting. Why are you? That's why we're thrilled to partner with Aura. Your personal data is a goldmine for hackers, and Aura helps lock it down. Aura monitors the dark web, blocks data brokers from selling your information, includes a VPN for private browsing, and a password manager to secure your accounts before criminals break in. For a limited time, Aura is offering our listeners a 14-day free trial plus a dark web scan to check if your personal information has been leaked, all for free at aura.com/safety. That's aura.com/safety to sign up and start protecting yourself and your loved ones. That's aura.com/safety. Terms apply. Check the site for details.
Wildlife habitat, and the birds and bees get to keep living happily in the wild. Not gonna lie, this is pretty impressive. I kind of want to see this yard, not just because it's a national wildlife habitat, but the way that it was described just sounds totally beautiful and tranquil and peaceful. So I don't know why any bitter neighbor would want to destroy that, but it sounds like OP got what they wanted in the end, and gladly so. DH Gott commented, NPR ran a story years ago about a woman from Arizona who pulled up her grass and returned her yard to a native desert condition. She was told by the county to remove that trash and plant a green lawn. She took her fight to City Hall and eventually won. Our next story is, I wore a suit to work and got my supervisor demoted. I'm posting mainly because I'm not a passive-aggressive type, and I'm in disbelief that this actually worked. Ever since I started at my job a few months ago, my supervisor, we'll call him Josh, has been micromanaging me. When I'm the subject of criticism, which is often, I try to give him the benefit of the doubt and ask him to clarify. What are your expectations? What specifically should I have done differently? Josh's responses are always vague, often something to the effect of, just do better. I even had a meeting with Josh and HR to discuss this, but to no avail. Yesterday, Josh comes to my desk to tell me I need to dress better. Now, I work at a small company, and the vibe is unusually casual. A not insignificant number of people come to work wearing jeans, hoodies, t-shirts, and/or baseball caps. I've never worn a hat to work, and I make a point of wearing a button-up shirt with a collar every day. This particular day, I was wearing a long-sleeve button-up flannel, chino pants, and Adidas Gazelles. Other days, I wear loafers and dress shirts that are tucked in. So I asked Josh to clarify. Should I be wearing dress shoes, dress shirt, tucked in? What specifically do you want me to change? Josh tells me I just need to dress better and that I should talk to HR for clarification. So I go into HR and ask, what is the dress code? I get a standard answer. Pants, closed-toed shoes, no sleeveless shirts, etc. I ask, have I ever worn anything to work that poses a problem? HR says, no, you're fine. Because I'm mad, and because my repeated efforts to resolve this kind of problem had gone unheeded, I decided to be petty. The next day, today, I showed up to work in a full suit. It's one I keep for events like weddings, so it's fitted and I look really sharp in it. It's also wildly and conspicuously overdressed for the office I work in. I had several interactions with people coming to my desk to comment on my outfit and ask what the occasion was. When anyone asked, only if they asked, I told them I had been told to dress better. This was always met with disbelief and incredulity. Two people even said they liked the way I dress normally. When anyone asked me who the order came from, again, only if they asked, I told them it came from Josh. I was expecting to pull my little stunt for a week just to prove a point, and then go back to wearing what I had been wearing before. Word got around the office fast, apparently, because the CEO, Josh's direct boss, came to my desk later in the day to tell me I would be reporting to him now, and that he'd be having a talk with Josh about this and other issues. It's important to note that I was Josh's only underling, so he effectively went from being a supervisor to just a regular employee. I'm on a bit of a high now. I think I'm going to come into work tomorrow wearing a different one of my flannels. There seems to be some deep-seated jealousy or envy here that's not fully being touched upon by Josh. So, yeah, he gets his comeuppance and wear what you want to work as long as it's appropriate and according to the very lax dress code. I Got Fancy Pants replied, "This reminds me of a true story my husband told me. This would have taken place in the 1950s. His childhood best friend's father was a skilled machinist. That can be mentally exciting, but sometimes a dirty job. So the guys wore casual clothes to the shop. He had done this work for decades and liked the job. One day, when he was in his 50s, he simply decided he was tired of always dressing in casual clothes. Life is too short for that, he decided, and he had several nice suits that he wore only to church, weddings, and funerals. Why not wear them all the time? So he began wearing suits to the shop every day. His coworkers were confused, but just shrugged and went about the work. It threw management into a tailspin, however. It made them uncomfortable in some undefinable way. Finally, at a loss as to how to handle this sartorial crisis, they promoted him to management. Mr. E, gone but not forgotten. Our next story is Confetti It Is Then. This story happened over a decade ago, when my city was starting up a must-use-this bin for trash and a recycle bin will be provided as well schemes. My roommates and I got the notice for this new changeover, and we were reading the requirements and such. We all noticed one glaring thing. All paper products must be loose and not bagged. This included shreds. My friends and I discussed this and talk about how dumb it is, etc. And then the new phone books started showing up. Cue bright idea. We then started asking at work, friends, family, neighbors, etc., if they had anything they needed to shred and if we could have their phone books. I mean, even at this point, no one used them anyways. We had literal piles of phone books and papers, envelopes, and anything else paper we could run through our shredders. I think it took a few weeks for us to manage to get through all the phone books we had, and if I recall correctly, we killed at least one shredder. In the end, we had like 4 30-gallon trash bags full of shreds, cross-cut confetti-sized shreds, which we then lovingly packed into the recycle bin, full to the top and slightly packed. Then trash day comes. Unfortunately, I worked nights, so I didn't get to see the dumping of the shreds, but upon waking, I knew it was a glorious occasion. Shreds everywhere. I would imagine that we were not the only ones with this bright idea, as a few weeks later, a notice showed up, stating that the rules had been amended, all shreds were to be bagged in clear plastic trash bags. Gosh, I can only imagine the mess. You cannot pay me any sum of money to clean up paper shreds from all over the neighborhood after garbage day. Yikes. Mother of the World 2 commented, "My city does not allow shredded paper in the recycle bin at all. No shredded paper. We cannot put plastic bags in that bin and a list of other plastics that cannot be recycled. So my shredded paper gets bagged and in the trash bin, as that's the only other option, and that all goes to the landfill. Dumb, I know." Our next story is, send out defective parts? Okay. Years ago, I was head of quality control for a major partner company that built transmission parts for a big U.S. automaker that started with F. My job at that company consisted of daily audits and testing of parts to make sure they met specifications and functioned correctly. One of the testing procedures was a machine that would test the parts to ensure they rotated 360 degrees without catching or getting stuck, and they either passed or failed. Failed parts would get reworked, of course. For the first year of the job, B was great, and I took pride in it because if you're spending over 50 grand on a new car, you'd want it to work properly, right? Well, after a year, the plant manager and CEO of the partner company came up to me one day and said that we would no longer be doing the rotation test. I was surprised because, for one, any changes in procedure have to be approved by F, and second, my written work instructions at the station had to be changed out, updated, and stamped with approval, which was standard procedure anytime work instructions were updated. The work instructions would also have to be reviewed by F. They told me not to worry about it and just stop testing the parts and to just pack them up and ship them. I definitely sensed a crap storm coming because we did unfortunately have a high defect rate, and without this test process, 30% of the parts the customer received would be bad. But cue malicious compliance. Within a month, the results were clear. We were getting many complaints about bad parts, and parts were being returned at an alarming rate. Some higher-ups from F even did a walkthrough to try and see what the issue was, and that's when they noticed that they weren't testing the parts before sending them out anymore. I was called into the conference room later that day for a meeting with the plant manager.
This podcast is brought to you by Aura. By the time you hear about a data breach, your information has already been exposed for months. On average, companies take 277 days to report a breach. That's 9 months where hackers have access to your personal data. That's why we're thrilled to partner with Aura. Aura is an all-in-one digital safety solution that monitors the dark web for your phone number, email, and social security number, sending real-time alerts if your info is found. It also includes a VPN, password manager, and data broker removal to help keep you safe. For a limited time, Aura is offering a 14-day free trial plus a dark web scan to check if your personal information has been leaked, all for free at aura.com/safety. That's aura.com/safety to sign up and protect your loved ones. That's aura.com/safety. Terms apply. Check the site for details.
The CEO, and the higher-ups from F. The plant manager and CEO looked furious, and I knew they were going to put the blame on me, but I was prepared. Plant manager goes, "OP, the reason we called you here is because it was brought to our attention you aren't testing the parts before sending them out anymore. Is there a reason for this?" he said with a smug look. And I say, "Yes, you said not to test them anymore and to just send them out." And the CEO says, "That's not true. We never said that." I then proceeded to pull out the paper they mindlessly signed. "Here's the agreement you signed saying I'm not responsible for any bad parts getting sent out and how we're no longer testing them." The plant manager and CEO's faces both went pale, and I then gleefully handed the paper to the higher-ups from F. I was then asked to leave the room, and on my way out, I handed my 2 weeks' notice to the plant manager because I knew this company was screwed and had another job lined up. Long story short, they lost their contract with F and got sued for $3 million. The company shut its doors, and last I heard, they filed for Chapter 3 bankruptcy. I don't know what happened to the building or anyone else that worked there, and I don't even care. But I do know F had a major part shortage for a while after this. And this, dear viewers, is why you need to have a paper trail and document everything. And when you sign things, know what you're signing, because someone out there is going to use that against you, like OP Soakley did here. Avid Learner Bot commented, "The fact that company execs would recklessly sign off on abandoning quality control checks, only to see their reckless gamble blow up in their faces, it's just stunningly irresponsible, and I can't help but wonder how many other corporations are harboring similar dangers within their ranks." And OP replied to this, "This has happened at pretty much every company I've worked at. Higher-ups make stupid decisions, and it always backfires." Walking Trisani commented, "This is what happens when you let the free market regulate itself and refuse to force companies to take responsibility as they should with proper regulations, which is one of the many reasons why many U.S. companies have so much success in the U.S. but fail miserably as soon as they set foot in the EU or anywhere regulations, including workers' rights, exist. As soon as regulations are being applied as they should, the sharks have orcas coming for them in the form of healthy competition, regulators, and unions. I'm not saying this kind of thing never happens in the EU, but oh boy, are the higher-ups getting their proper FAFO moment way more easily than they would without regulations. Our next story is, we don't use track changes here. When I started working with a particular company, my boss, Wallace, absolutely hated using track changes, and he didn't allow anyone to use them. "We do not use track changes here," he told me profoundly on my first day. This meant that we had to type and print everything, go next to him on his desk, and he would correct our work using any medium which was within reach: pencil, blue ink, purple ink, coal, a squid, whatever. This led to infinite asterisks, up arrows, down arrows, speech bubbles, etc., and countless misunderstandings and mistakes which wasted everyone's time and basically frustrated everyone. Some people raised it to higher-ups, but to no avail. I tried to convince him twice to use track changes by listing all the benefits, etc. On the third try, he snapped at me and shouted at me in front of everyone, "Didn't I freaking tell you that we don't use track changes here?" I remained standing up and loudly and calmly apologized in front of everyone and agreed with him that track changes are unnecessary and I will never, ever use them again. Then I picked up my faintest and messiest pen and scribbled my answers, comments, and suggestions in reply to his feedback with something as close to a love child between wingdings and hieroglyphics as possible, on a 50-page urgent document, using asterisks and PTOs and everything I could think of. I left the document on his desk while he was in a meeting and cheerfully went home. The next morning, we found an email from Wallace, timed at 10:30 p.m., requesting us to start using track changes immediately. At the end of that day, following my coworker's treatment, I understood why superheroes join the Avengers. Gotta be satisfying to prompt an abrupt, sudden 180 from boss man like that. Good for you. Mean Security replied, "My boss does not appear to understand track changes. Today, he changed a paragraph to all strike-through." Dude. And Titania T-Rex added, "We get that all the time. It's annoying as heck when we have to run the documents through the software that strikes the deleted items. We have to delete all the strike-through items, then run the document back through the software. So annoying." Our next story is, pipe exploded on the weekend, but hey, at least we saved on overtime. In 2006, I worked as a maintenance technician in a small office building. My job was to make sure everything works properly: air conditioning, plumbing, electricity, all that stuff. Then we got a new boss from some big corporate office, and he was obsessed with cutting costs. First week, he tells us all, in a very serious voice, "From now on, absolutely no overtime, no matter what, no exceptions." We all kind of looked at each other like, is he serious? So Friday afternoon, around 4:30 p.m., I get an alert from the boiler room. Pressure in one of the water pipes is very high. I check it, and the pipe is vibrating like crazy. I know if we don't release the pressure or fix it, it's going to explode. I go to the boss and tell him, "This pipe is dangerous. I need maybe 1 to 2 hours overtime to fix it tonight." He looks at the clock and says, "It's past 5 soon. No overtime. We'll handle it Monday." "Okay, boss. No problem." So I go home. Saturday morning, I get a call from the security guy who works weekends. He's freaking out. "Water is pouring out of the boiler room. It's flooded in the hallway. What do I do?" I laugh and I say, "Too late. Nothing we can do now. Perhaps swim?" On Monday, the boss walks in and smells wet carpet and disaster. Half the ground floor is underwater. Documents ruined, IT equipment drowned. Rest in peace. He comes to me angry. "Why didn't you stop this?" I just say, "You told me no overtime. Pipe didn't want to wait till Monday." Cleanup costs thousands, and guess what? From that day, boss never said no to overtime again. In fact, from then on, when we reported just an inkling of a suspicion that something might be wrong, he simply said, "Do what you have to do. Just don't tell me the hours." Sometimes pipe is the best teacher. Yeah, if you have an impending major issue like this, like, I don't care what your policies are, that needs to be addressed immediately, especially if it's on a Friday. You're not going to put off a potentially busted pipe until Monday. That's just poor management. Shadow Dragon 8685 replied, "You can schedule maintenance downtime, or your equipment can schedule the maintenance without telling you. You had the very rare butter zone intersection where the equipment scheduled the maintenance but actually gave you a few hours notice." Up to No Good 13 replied, "I'm an industrial inspector. Tanks, pressure vessels, piping, etc. When I find things in questionable condition, I'll often get asked, 'Well, how long can we go before repairing or replacing?' My mantra is, a planned shutdown is cheaper than an unplanned shutdown. Every single time." Our next story is, punishing me for underperforming for 1 day in 2 years? No problem. Hello, everyone. I'll try to be concise. Background. I work at a company where I handle mid to high level complaints to managers, PR, and legal. My daily requirement is 40 cases handled per day. There are some of my team colleagues that struggle with this, but I don't, and I don't feel lazy to stop at 40. So I've handled 50 to 55 basically every day for the past 2 years. There's no bonus or even recognition for this. I just did it because I felt a friendly obligation to the company. Complaints can be a 5-minute resolution or a 2-hour Zoom call with our New York lawyers. It's a gamble, really. The event. Recently, I had a day where I felt a bit sick and, at the same time, had bad luck of getting only very hard cases that required more time, so I had 39 cases, one under the requirement. I thought nothing of it, as my weekly average way off the charts, 50 plus as usual. The very next day, I felt better and went back to my usual high numbers. Come Monday, I had an emergency one-on-one with my manager where I was informed that I had to attend a 3-day workshop seminar on how to best meet requirements because I underperformed last week. My jaw dropped, and I asked, don't they count the weekly, monthly, and yearly numbers? To which I was told that the daily requirement is 40, and this is standard practice, nothing we can do. Basically, it was a workshop for underperformers who had 20 to 30 out of 40 cases daily. It was nothing hard, but I did need to drive there for 3 days after work and listen to HR guys giving bad advice, as they never actually handled the cases in real life. And I had to talk about what I will do to improve my numbers and reach the 40, as the nonsense HR calls it. This made me lose hours and hours of my free time, and I was livid. After it was over, I had a long think, and I decided that I will do exactly that. I will reach the 40, and that's it. The aftermath. For the past few months, I go into work, I handle 40 cases, my daily requirement, and then I do nothing for the rest of my shift. I've had multiple one-on-ones with my manager during this time, and I'm constantly asked, is something wrong? To which I naively reply, no. Am I in trouble? Am I underperforming? And then, of course, they say that I'm 100% within daily requirements, and that way I shut the conversation down. This is real life, so I can't really say a clever comeback or something like that, but I do keep playing the fool that has no idea what's wrong now. But I find satisfaction in knowing that they got used to my overachieving and are now suffering for the lack of it. Before Easter, they put up an internal ad for promoting another 2 managers. So my guess is how that's the number of people they will now need to pay extra, just because they lost me as an overachiever, and they lost me for no reason other than their own stupidity. Thank you all. I hope I did not bore you. Yeah, this sounds pretty consistent with just the current state of the workforce. Working extra really doesn't get you any extra favor in the grand scheme of things. It gets taken for granted. And heaven forbid you do anything below what they're accustomed to you doing, which is overachieving. And, they'll take a bite out of your butt for it. So good on you for realizing this and scaling back, OP. They clearly don't appreciate you. Loco8765 replied, they give you a class on how to reach the 40, so you're applying what you were taught. Also an example of bad metrics ill-used. Gelatin Ghost replied, businesses pretending they're data-driven usually just means they're too lazy to apply common sense. Instead, they micromanage employees with almost arbitrarily chosen metrics without thought. They deserve malicious compliance and the resulting loss of market share. Our next story is, you're not paid to think. Okay, so I didn't. A few years ago, I worked as a copywriter at a small PR agency run by a tyrant of a boss. Let's call her Marcy. She was all about control. One day, during a strategy meeting, I pointed out a huge flaw in a campaign that could have cost our client major money. Her response? You're not paid to think. You're paid to write what I tell you. Cool, got it. From that point on, I followed her instructions exactly. No suggestions, no edits, no heads up when things were obviously going sideways. Just pure, flawless compliance. Within 2 months, 2 major clients left over tone-deaf campaigns. Ones I had tried to fix but was explicitly told not to. Guess who got blamed? Me. Guess who kept receipts? Also me. I forwarded my "just doing what you told me" email chain to HR. Turns out, this wasn't the first complaint. She was restructured out of the company 3 weeks later. Edit. Sorry for using a hyphen. Apparently, that's a no-no. Said it before, I'll say it again, I'll keep saying it. Keep paper trails of everything. Document every conversation that you have with someone that you may potentially have an issue with down the line, and this is why. According Register 73 commented, Early in my career, I had a manager who would give me reports or letters to type up on multiple scraps of paper, often stapled or pinned together, with post-it notes and strips of scrap paper attached with additions and helpful notes like insert yellow post-it here when there were 6 or 7 yellow post-its attached. She was awful at checking herself, would put wrong or impossible dates, wrong names for people, etc. I always managed to make something of the mess, whether it was a letter or report, but one day I'd interpreted a note incorrectly or put it in the wrong place. She went off it and dressed me down in front of clients, insisting I should just do what she says from now on. So I did. One report was in such a state it was escalated to a higher manager. She'd submitted it without proofing it, of course. We were called into a meeting, and when asked, she blamed me for all the mistakes. I remember one date was April 31st, and the big boss's name was incorrectly spelled at least once. I'd brought with me the pile of crepe I'd been given, post-its and pinned notes and all. He stabbed himself on a dressmaking pin, just as I'd done loads of times before. I'd also brought the memo where she'd previously told me not to correct anything she'd submitted. I don't know what was exactly said to her afterwards, but soon after, I was successful in getting another job in a different department. She wasn't given a replacement, and anything she needed went to the central admin team to sort out instead. Daft thing is, she was actually a nice woman. We'd been friendly before we worked together, but she was an awful manager with no clue about getting the best work out of people. Affectionate Fig 9277 replied, "If only managers came with a bit of humility. I think a lot of people would take incompetence to an extent if it came with proper communication. Maybe your manager was really good at certain things and this was just her one blind spot. She could have recognized that and said, 'Gee, according Register 73, I know this is a mess. Can you do anything with it?' And then answered any question you may have had. But no, managers can't admit their limitations. They're so much better than the rest of us actually doing the work." Okay, everybody, that is all the time we have for today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and comment down below. And if you want to check out any of our other videos, click the video on the right. All that said, I will see you next time.